so I don't forget the whole
Aren't you?
I'm ready.
All right.
Yours is the iPad, huh?
Yeah, but can they hear me?
I don't think so.
All right. I'll just wait one more minute for the last stragglers, and then we'll start.
Cool.
How's it going, everybody? You're all.
Everybody's muted, it looks like. I didn't mute them.
Yeah, they've learned the etiquette.
Right. Oh, we got one more there. Megan just showed up. Oh, and I'm not going to try to pronounce that name. I will do it wrong. Maybe yeah.
Mingting.
Yeah, that's it.
Yep.
Hi. What's up, Rakshasa? He's going to come and visit for sure.
Hi, Megan.
And, oh, yeah. There we go. Hi, Kitty. Oh, yeah. Got plenty more coming in. There we go.
Oh, I seen you before. Hi. You remember me?
I do.
Oh God, I completely forgot that you're Whitney. Oh my God. Yep. Don't you still work at the zoo or no?
I don't. I actually quit in January of 18.
Oh.
So I do my own business now.
Oh really?
Which is what we're talking about today. I do
cool.
animal behavior, pet behavior, and pet training now. What are you doing, Kat? Do you even know? All right. Well, put him a little bit more on camera. There we go.
There we go. It's really good to see you. Amazing. How have you been?
I've been doing pretty good. Oh, got a couple more. I'll wait one more minute since it looks like we got a bunch of people still. I've been doing pretty good. Getting feeling cooped up, but I'm sure everybody is right now.
Yeah.
Hi, kitten. All right. Okay, if anybody else comes in, I'll just click and let them in. So my name is Whitney. I'm with Buchman Bestial Behaviors. As Jimmy pointed out, I used to work for the zoo. I actually have about 13 years of zoo experience. I've been training dogs since I was probably 11 or 12 years old. Never mind how many moons that was ago. So I got a lot of behavioral training. And I use what's known as animal behavior analysis, which is very similar to applied behavior analysis, which is what they use with, basically they use that on human. Applied behavior analysis is used on humans, animal behavior analysis used on animals. But it goes from the same principles of operant conditioning, which I'm sure you all have seen fun little charts like this regarding operant conditioning. You divide it into the 4 different categories: positive reinforcement, positive punishment, negative reinforcement, and negative punishment. Now, with my methodologies, I focus mostly on the positive reinforcement and the negative punishment, which basically means I am taking away things that they want in hopes to reduce a behavior. Punishment meaning reducing, negative meaning you're taking away something, positive meaning you're adding something, and reinforcement meaning you're increasing a behavior. I do avoid positive punishment, and I also avoid negative reinforcement, primarily because one term I actually use another, somebody else is making it in. Another trainer actually took it, was positive punishment is, it's basically like crutches with side effects. So positive punishment can get a very quick response right then to reduce a behavior. However, it can have side effects for later on, such as increased aggression issues, phobia issues developed in the animal. So positive punishment is like, obviously, implementing pain, choke chains, and things like that would be in my career field as positive punishment. Negative reinforcement would be things like the bits on a horse, where you're taking something away to increase a behavior. The thing is, the way a bit on a horse works is they actually cause pain on the horse, and then when the horse goes the correct direction, they take the pain away. So I avoid those two things because they tend to have, as I said, they can have side effects. Does it happen in every animal? No, but when you have 200 to 300% increased chance of an aggressive situation being caused, that's why we avoid those. So it sounds like you guys already know about operant conditioning, so I'm going to kind of skip ahead. I am more from the behaviorist side, so I look more into the idea of the behavior of an animal. Now, there's lots of different sources of behavior. One thing with animal behavior analysis or applied behavior analysis is we go under the assumption that all behavior is learned. Everything is learned, but we still also have to realize that there are different aspects of how that behavior can come about. So the sources of behavior, there is a genetic component. There's the individual history of with animal behavior analysis. We don't usually use pet or animal. We actually we use the term learner. It's just more of a mental thing for ourselves. So, but we have to take into account the genetics of the individual animal, the individual history, the current conditions, and also behavior starts with a random movement and then basically changes based into a more efficient process for whatever resource or reinforcement that animal wants. I.e., if they find that they jump over here and they get a reward, then they're going to eventually do that more and more often in a more efficient way to get that reward. So the genetics component has said that all behaviors learned. So when I look at things, I still look at the genetic component of an animal. So if I work with a dog, for example, that is bred for attacking and biting somebody, then I know that while this dog doesn't necessarily show that behavior, if I know that in its lineage it has a bunch of champion, I'm trying to remember the name of the German competition, but there's a competition with bite dogs, and it's got multiple lineages linking to that, then I know that this dog has a propensity for that. That doesn't mean, though, that behavior just magically appears. It still has to learn the behavior. What the genetics does is it makes it prone to that behavior. So they might not realize that they like to get into a fight until they get into a fight, if that makes sense. Then the genetics kick in, and then maybe at that point in time. But we still can also unlearn. I shouldn't say unlearn, but we can alter those behaviors, and I'll talk about that in just a little bit. So when I go in to look at a behavior, when you use animal behavior analysis, you look at 5 main questions. These questions are, what does the behavior look like? What event predicts the behavior? And I'll talk more about that here in a second. What does the learner get by engaging this behavior? And under what conditions does the learner not do the behavior? What do you want the learner to do instead? And also in there, we also use the word verbify. A lot of people will have a habit when they're talking about animals, they will say things like, oh, he's angry, or he's very aggressive, or things of that nature. When we're looking at behavior is what's exhibited on the outside. So what's the animal's doing to the outside environment, its world. So that's what I'm looking for. In this method, we have to take into a lot of a part of psychology known as mind theory. Mind theory is the most basic thing in psychology, which is, I can't read your mind, you can't read my mind, so why do we think we can read the animal's mind? So we have to get that out of there and just go, you know what? Instead of saying the dog's aggressive, I look and go, the dog is lunging and snapping its teeth and barking. So that's why we say verbify. Say what the animal's doing, not a description of what you think the animal or some type of emotional context. Because another thing that we do, we have a tendency to project, which means we put what we're thinking onto a behavior. And maybe that's not why it's doing it at all. It could be a fear response rather than an anger response. And I like to say, when we when we start labeling all these types of behaviors, we put blinders on and we actually have a good chance of missing what's actually causing it. Now, I said what events predict the behavior. With applied behavior analysis or animal behavior analysis, there's a lot of use of what is known as the ABCs: antecedent, behavior, consequence. So that's what I'm looking for. Now, antecedent is everything before the behavior, then the behavior happens, and then there's the consequence. So, for example, if I ask a dog to sit, then that's the antecedent. It comes before the behavior, or what we call a cue, which I'll talk about here, cues and signals. So I say sit, the dog sits, that's the behavior. And then from that behavior, I would click and then reward the dog once they do it. So that's the consequence. Now, the problem that most people have with this, especially with my clients, is understanding that antecedent just isn't what you say. So for example, a lot of times people will tell me, oh, but when we're at home, the dog never does this. Well, being at home would be part of the antecedent. It includes not just you saying a word or asking for a command. It's the environment that the animal's in. It also includes how the animal's feeling. There's a lot of antecedent to biting behaviors with dogs that reach around 8 to 10 years of age. Why? Because now they got arthritis, which is an internal antecedent. So if you have constant migraines or are in constant pain, oh, somebody else is coming in, admitting. There we go. If you are in constant pain, your fuse, if you will be shorter and more likely to you're more likely to act out. So that would be an antecedent. So I look for those different antecedents for the behaviors. And then also try to figure out what the animal is getting out of it. That would be the consequence. So for problem behaviors that I work with a lot, what is the dog getting out of it? And sometimes it could just simply be an internal endorphin rush. Dogs defend their territory, so they like to bark at things. So that is a behavior that they can self-teach them to do. They do it themselves just because, hey, that was fun. I enjoyed doing that. I'm going to do it again, until it becomes a habitual thing. So antecedents, I look for things like cues and signals. I actually have a nice little video of when I'm working with animals, I actually try to create signals, and we have to do it very consistently with the owners. In this video I'm going to show, we have a child who actually was not enjoying interacting with the dog because the dog is a Boston Terrier. It's very hyperactive, and little kids are down on its level. So what we did was we taught the kid to do a certain behavior to create a cue or a signal to do another behavior. And then you'll hear some clicks, and I'll talk about those here in a second as well. But here, let's see if we can get that. So the cues and signals are basically the stimulus that we put in there to kind of create these behaviors. So here you're going to see it. Let's see here in a second. There we go. So one thing I did was I taught the kid to put his arms around himself, because
all right, let's try again, James.
The instinct is for them to put their
reward.
Hands out. So I'm making sure the child is giving him the reward so that the dog understands that it's coming from him. I'm controlling what's known as the
That'll do it.
There we go. So that created a situation.
Excellent.
With this pup. Oh, no. Let's see. So what I'm doing is creating a situation with the client. I'm actually going to lower the volume on that. There we go. So what I'm doing is creating a signal for the kid to have control of the situation, where he tells the dog and communicates with the dog that I don't want to play like that. And the dog gets reinforced to do that behavior over and over again. Otherwise, if the kid were to flail out and just kind of put his fingers in the dog's face, then that would actually encourage the dog to do the behavior more. So what we're trying to do is get this alternate behavior, which I'm going to talk about a little later on. These are called differential reinforcements that we create so that the animal chooses a more correct behavior and creates a method for communicating between the human and the dog. So in this case, The kid didn't like playing with the pup because he was always in his face. But now when the kid is done and doesn't want to play that way, he now has a way to signal the dog that we're stopping. There we go. Okay. Now, and feel free, actually, do I have the chat open so I can see it? If anybody has questions, go ahead, put them in the chat. And also I'll open it up at the end so that, I can, for if people just want to ask questions as we go. Or you can also say it during the session as well. So, now I said there is a thing known as a bridge or a marker. That would be these clickers that we utilize. Clicker is our method for signaling to the animal that they did the correct thing. This is something that you don't necessarily use in human applied behavior, but you use it a lot with animals because they can't speak, they can't communicate as well. And in fact, actually, when you're using applied behavior analysis, sometimes when you're a human behaviorist, you are working with nonverbal individuals, in which case you still need you might have to come up with some form to communicate back and forth. This just means good job. And that's because timing is everything, especially with animals. They say between a good trainer and a great trainer. So like we're talking like the maybe like SeaWorld level trainers and then like the internationally known animal trainers, the difference in timing with them is 0.3 milliseconds. You don't have to be that. I always tell my clients they don't have to be that fast, but I just like to say that because timing is everything. With our brains, we have a very short time span to create association that actually changes behavior. It's what even with humans, it's why humans are really bad at savings accounts and things like that. We need to mark that exact moment that they did the thing we want so that they can get the reward. And one of the things is, since we are using food as a reward, we can't instantaneously, hello Rakshasa, we cannot instantaneously teleport the food into their mouth. So this is our method to let them know that, hey, they did the right thing. Sometimes it is also known as a secondary reinforcer. This next video I'm going to show you, you're going to be able to hear the clicks. I have the owner teaching still Willie, that's the dog from the one before, and Willie is going to actually do some jumping behaviors. But I want you to listen for the click and then notice when the owner reaches for the bag. Now there's all sorts of other things that we have to watch out for in those situations, but so I'm just leaving this up there because this might be a note for you guys for later, but the bridge is the marker of the event. And also sometimes it's called that secondary reinforcer because it itself doesn't reinforce. We make it reinforcing by adding a reward after the sound. I could click all day to a dog and they don't care until they start noticing I click and a treat and a click and a treat. And then they go, oh, that's what that is. In the field of animal training, we sometimes call it, when we actually need to create that association, we call it charging the clicker, in which case we click, reward, and we don't actually ask for behaviors. We just create an association with, hey, that click happened. It's time for the reward. So here, listen for the clicks. And also when doing this, there we go. Now also notice, so this is different. The bridge is different than the cue.
There we go.
And here the cue is actually his hand kind of going over the jump. There it is. And then the bridge or the click is the marker. They call it a bridge because it's supposed to bridge that gap in time between when you can get the food into the animal's mouth and from when they do the actual behavior. But this way we can actually mark, hey, you did it. Now, obviously, I've already worked with the dog, and I'm now handing it over to the client in these types of videos. So we signal, we cue, and then we also make sure we use these bridges. Now, another thing I will utilize in my work is what's known as target training. Target training is when you get an animal to touch a body part to, well, basically anything. For my clients in the zoo field, we will often, let me actually show you. with a lot of animals, actually, we will use like little wands, and this little ball will be the target. So the animal boops its nose or maybe puts a paw on it or something along those lines. Usually we put the nose because if you guide an animal from its nose of its body, you can pretty much guide it to wherever you want. I've actually got a parrot client that the parrot, or cockatoo technically, but we have it flying around the room now on command. And then we also, from the target, we can teach other behaviors. That's actually how we taught Willie, that you just saw, to jump the hurdle. First, we taught him target, which is just booping his nose to a hand in this case. And then we just moved the hand over the hurdle, and he pretty quickly figured out, oh, you want me to go over the hurdle. Then we take the target away, and then it's now a new behavior. In zoo field, that's how you get a tiger to move from one cage to the other. You target train them, then you ask them to shift, you move it, etc. So it would look something like this. This is another one of my clients. So target training, as I said, is touching a body part or anything to something, and it's very useful. It makes it look real impressive when you go to the vet clinic and they ask for a weight. Let's see here. So
Perfect. Okay, and I'm guessing target still works just fine.
see that dog's
Yeah, sure.
attention change there? Boom. So that is super handy because now you have a way to move the animal in a way that you want, especially if you have a larger animal that you can't pick up or things of that nature. Now, so that's target training. In another aspect that we use it, there's station training, where an animal goes to a location. And I'm actually going to show you a little bit of this. Next video kind of puts everything together, because the dog in this video did not know what the bed was. In fact, actually, we put a blanket that you're going to see. We put a blanket in there to mark where we were going to put an eventual bed to teach the dog to go to the bed. So station training is similar to target training, but it's a location or a spot. Sometimes you can teach it with like little red dots or something on the floor that you can move around. In this case, we actually not this video. I'll do this one. There we go. So this blanket, you can see that blanket against the wall. We actually just put that there. The dog has not seen that there before this moment. Oh, if it will play. Minor technical difficulties. Why are you not playing? All right, not a problem. We will. One quick glitch and I will fix that, though. Luckily, I have another copy that I know works, so let's see here. Let's do this one. All right. Okay. No, not that one. There we go. All right, let's try this again. Oh, not that. There we go. All right, so I'm going to lower the volume of this, and explain what I'm doing. So you're going to see me start with the target behavior to help guide him to the bed. So here I am actually kind of working on the fly because I'm trying to decide what I want my first marker to be. And in this case, it's a high-end reinforcer. It's some turkey. Because different reinforcers have different values. So what I'm trying to get is like 2 to 3 paws onto that bed, because this is a whole new behavior. There we go. So now you see me doing that target behavior to help guide him. Because if he doesn't know what I want, then it's my job to figure out how to tell him what I want him to do. The owner, of course, got in the way, but that's okay. So there we go. So now I got that first behavior where he actually left me and went to the bed. So now I'm trying to get further away and change it. Oh, got excited by something at the door. And this is also one of the reasons why I teach target. He saw something at the door. I actually asking him to go away from that, which is one of the first things that we were working on with him. There we go. See, do you notice his reaction as soon as he hears the click? He knows something good happened, so he starts looking for me because he knows there's the reinforcer. Now I'm going to change where the reinforcement comes, because also where they get their reinforcement is also important. So right now he's getting it from me, which means he has to leave the bed to get his reward. So eventually I'm going to start tossing that reward onto the bed so that he stops leaving it. Now, right now, he's just a little confused, and that's perfectly fine. What we do is in the animal field, we also take what's known as I should say anytime you're doing applied behavior analysis, you take approximations. So obviously they can't jump to the top of the stairs. They have to take one step at a time along the process. Back in the day when I taught a parrot to walk a rope in an arena type show, we took a few steps at a time until eventually the parrot would just do 60 feet of walking the rope with periodic little dance moves. But you take that first step one at a time. And now he's calming down. Yeah, so this dog also had an issue, which I'll get more into in a later video where I talk about him. So let's see about the next. Oh, there we go. Okay. So let's see. That was that one. Okay, so that's station training when you get the animal to go to a spot. Actually, why did? That's interesting. All right. Having some technical difficulties real quick, but so the reason we did that for him was because he was jumping on people on the couch. Giving him station training gives him another type of behavior. Looks like we are getting close to the time. I was told I can go a little. Oh, I see some questions. How long do I'll get to those questions here in just a second. I know some of you have to go to the next thing. We'll be recording this and putting it up. I just have a couple more things I was going to go to, but I do have a question. How long do dogs or cats learn a specific behavior? Are you asking how long does it take them to learn, or how long do they retain the behavior?
How long does it take?
How long does it take? Yeah. Well, actually, I was going to show you in the next video that, of course, it decided to glitch out for some odd reason. Actually, maybe, you know what? What if I just close this? There we go. Oh, I see the issue. Having PowerPoint difficulties.
Feel free to keep going. And if anybody has another meeting that they're leaving for, that's okay, but we're recording it. And if you can stay, go ahead and stay so you can get some more information. Okay.
So I just figured out what the error is, so I can fix that. To show you Walter, and actually I'll answer this while showing you Walter's final behavior of the station. Okay, there we go. There we go. So this actually took maybe 10, 15 minutes of time with Walter. Now, I changed the rules here. So notice the antecedent has changed. Every time before I asked him to do it, I was standing. The antecedent has shifted now because I'm now sitting over here. So he's trying to, this is what we call an appeasement behavior. He doesn't know what I want, so he's throwing every behavior that has ever gotten him some reinforcement in the past. because he's just trying to throw things out there. And then I let him get a little frustrated. Then as soon as he goes over there, I toss the treat onto the bed. So this behavior, and now he calmly sits there while we calmly sit at the couch. Well, pretty sure he finally does at the end of this video, if I recall. So it started with 2 paws on as one approximation. Later on, we got 4 paws on. Then it's 4 paws and stay on it. Then it was sitting or laying down on it was the final reward point for that. But generally, these types of simple behaviors, target training usually takes me 2 to 5 minutes to teach an animal to target train. It takes other people longer. If you have poor timing, it causes confusion with the animal, which is or person, honestly. Once the communication's off, that's where we start having issues. Oh. So, let's see. I can go back to the other presentation that was broken. Yes, repair it. All right. So that would be the station training. Now, also, we have, okay, what is going on? All right. Where was it? Okay, so that's the station training. Another example of the station training is right here. I have a enable content. Yes, I have a good video of that. Actually, this is another. Actually, this is a high school. This is another high school teacher's home. But this dog's name is Coda, and he would charge the door like many dogs do. So now that we did with the station behaviors, we changed the antecedent, not just us asking for them to go to the bed, but when he hears the doorbell, notice he was actually heading there already. So the doorbell became the antecedent. We changed that to the cue that we want for the behavior. And then he goes over there instead of charging the door. So that's how we kind of throw that all together into one go. So that's how station training can help with a lot of different things. We're asking them to do new things. All right, dogs have been man's best friend for a long time. Is domestication related to operant condition in any way? No, and I'll explain that. Also, what does domestication process look like? Domestication process is breeding. So there is a difference between feral. There's a difference between, there's another term, tame. That's it, the word tame. So when people think of a tiger that is living with somebody, then that is an animal that is tamed. That is a wild animal that has been brought in and under behavioral changes, hopefully, but I would not put a tiger in a home. That's a bad idea on all sorts of levels. But when you take a wild animal, bring it into a domesticated environment, that is called taming it. If you take an animal and breed it for generations and years and years and years to become domesticated and used to a domestic life, i.e. domestic just meaning living with humans, that is actually a process of breeding, and it creates a whole different line. So farm animals are domesticated because they've been bred to live on the farm. Dogs are domesticated because they've been bred to live with humans. You put a dog and send it out into the wild, it has a much lower chance of survival than other dogs. Now the reverse of that, so taming is when you take a wild animal and bring it in. If something goes feral, that means it was domesticated, it's bred and meant to be living with humans, but has gone into the wild. So a feral cat would be a cat that's not in a home, not being cared for, and now is out there. So these are terms that a lot of people get confused. So domestication is actually a process of breeding. Taming is the process of actually changing a wild animal's behavior so that it is more compatible with a domestic lifestyle. Does that answer that question? So how much reinforcing do you have to do to maintain the type of training like station training? Okay, once you get it locked in, the reinforcement, we call it the rate of reinforcement, how often we actually give them the reward. It drops with time. But I always tell my clients they always need to keep practicing and also you always need to still give them reinforcers even if it's not every 100% of the time, because if you stop getting a paycheck, do you keep going to work? Probably not. However, they have found with studies that when they do positive reinforcement training with animals versus more punishment style, the memory retention is a lot greater. I don't know the exact specifics of the experiment, but I know what they did was they took a group of dogs, and half of them were trained in more traditional or punishment-based learning styles, and then the other half were taught with purely positive reinforcement based, and it was some weird lab thing, so it's something that the dog would not do outside of the lab. And they brought those same dogs back 3 years later, and it was almost 100% across the board. The punishment-based could not do the experiment anymore. And without any new training, the ones that were taught with positive reinforcement remembered exactly how to do the like weird puzzle setup that they had for the dogs. So with positive reinforcement, the retention is much greater, but you still need to, oh, somebody else is waiting. You still need to reinforce later on. Let's see here. Where else was I going to go before we end? And if anybody has questions, feel free to put them in. The very last thing I was going to talk about was differential reinforcement. So differential reinforcement, that is, let's see here. Differential reinforcement is when you have, nope, not that one. This one. There we go. Differential reinforcement is when you have two behaviors, the old behavior that you don't want, and you add a new behavior and we try to replace it. This is often done in applied behavior analysis as well. Excuse me. So in this next video I'm going to show real quick, the dog had a habit of chasing the cats, and the cats did not like that. So what we did was we used target and a few other behaviors to create a situation where the dog actually ended up not chasing the cat. What we do is we give the dog a different behavior, and we have that dog doing the new behavior instead, and we reinforce that new behavior. And this one, it's very simple. Hey, instead of chasing the cat, how about you come to the human? So let's see here. Whoop. Let's get that shared before we start it going. There we go. And this one loves cheese. So the cat just ran by, and notice as soon as the dog turned around, that was when they received the click, and then they got the reward for going all the way back to the person. So by changing up the behavior a little bit, just asking them to do something different, it could be as simple as, instead of reacting to that stimulus over there, which could be a person, another dog, a cat running by real fast, how about you come over this way, and this way you're going to get this awesome reward. So we have the old behavior that we don't want, and then the new behavior that we replace it with. This also comes in play a lot when I'm teaching people because their dog jumps on them. Well, your dog loves you, and its reinforcement is contact and your attention. So jumping up is how it figures out to get that. But what we do is we teach sitting gets that attention, and then you stop giving the attention for jumping, but you do have to still make sure that you're giving attention and reinforcement when the dog sits, because the new behavior, sitting, and the old behavior, jumping, also are incompatible. You can't sit and jump at the same time, so they have to choose, but only one gets the reinforcement. If you just, that old school kind of methodology would be just ignore the dog and the behavior will go away. The problem is with that, you end up with what's known as an extinction burst in behavior, which means the behavior is going to get worse before it gets better. Think of it, I like to think of it as the elevator button. You know, we know logically that an elevator is not going to come faster when we hit if we hit the button more than once. But we want it to happen, so we keep doing it, even though the reinforcement of it isn't there. Maybe one day we did it and it happened, so we got that reinforcement then, and now it's not happening, so we push it like 18 million more times. That's extinction bursts. You do the behavior more before you stop. Also, it takes a long time for extinction to take effect. And the third problem is with extinction. I actually taught, oh, she's not there anymore, my oldest dog, I taught her to not jump up on people using extinction. We got 6 years later, we got a new puppy. Puppy jumped up, and the third problem of extinction showed up, which is it's still in there. We haven't replaced it, so the old behaviors can come back very quickly and very easily. So that's why I prefer doing differential reinforcement instead of that. Now, does anybody have any questions? I think since I'm already over time. No questions? All right. Well, if you do have any questions and want to just have her send me those questions, and we'll get it done. How much reinforcing do you have to do? Oh, no, I already answered that one. Okay, sweet, excellent.
Awesome.
Thank you, Mr. Whitney.
No problem. I hope you guys enjoyed it.
Okay, bye, Mr. Urban. I gotta go.
Bye, Jimmy.
Bye.